and the gate vanished. Jinwoo was left alone in the dungeon, surrounded by a dense forest. He realized he had entered a red gate. Between the trees, he noticed multiple monsters closing in. After assessing their strength, he concluded this dungeon wouldn't be a challenge. He estimated it would take about a day to clear. And then it came. A rise. His shadow army materialized around him. The monsters charged forward, but the shadows carved their way through the horde with ease. Tusk scorched the nearest group in a fiery blast, and Beru, standing atop a fallen giant, let out a triumphant roar. Within moments, the shadow army had wiped out every enemy in sight. When their bloody work was done, the shadows lined up in 2 rows, knelt, and bowed their heads in reverence to their king. Jinwoo walked through the corridor they formed and commanded his army to move on to their next target. A breathless hunter stared in horror at the towering figure looming over him. It was Sillid, the monarch of Frost. With a trembling voice, he asked, "What are you?" But Sillid didn't answer. Instead, he simply said, "I still haven't found the ones I seek. The fragments of brilliant light continue to elude me." At that moment, a portal opened behind him, and Yogamut, the monarch of Transfiguration, stepped through. Sillid asked what brought him there, and Yogamut replied that he had information about the Eastern Territory. Sillid knew the area belonged to the Shadow Monarch and was under Yogamut's oversight. What Sillid didn't know was that the rulers were planning to free the monarch Legia, who had been imprisoned just south of that region. Yogamut said that was exactly where he was headed, but Sillid asked one more question. What about the Shadow Monarch? Yogamut answered that as long as the architect upheld the agreement, there shouldn't be any trouble. A smirk curled on his lips. He looked at Sillid and added that he had one more piece of information. It had been confirmed that the greatest fragment of brilliant light was located in that very place. Sillid smiled. It was an interesting piece of information, and he was surprised that Yogamut had come to deliver it in person. Silence settled between them for a moment. Then Yogamut casually asked if Sillid might be interested in this opportunity. Sillid didn't hesitate for a second. If Yogamut was truly offering it to him, he would gladly accept. But then, Sillid froze. He sensed a presence and stated that they had likely been lured to this place on purpose. He turned around and saw a human approaching. It was impossible. Someone like him couldn't possibly wield the power of a fragment of brilliant light. And then it hit him. He had left too many signs behind. It was a trap. The cloaked man came to a halt just a few steps from the 2 monarchs. Then he spoke. "The small strip of land in the east. Are you referring to South Korea?" Sillid snapped at him, demanding what business it was of his. Yogamut, standing behind him, reminded Sillid that they didn't have time to play games with a weakling like this. Sillid turned toward the portal, ready to leave, and mockingly told the cloaked man to try and catch them, if he could. In the blink of an eye, daggers appeared in the man's hands, and he launched himself toward Sillid with blinding speed. Sillid raised his hand and conjured a massive block of ice to intercept the strike. He smiled, and then came the explosion. Jinwoo stood before the dungeon boss. The creature, surprised that Jinwoo could understand him, offered its congratulations, saying it was impressive that someone so small had made it this far. But it also warned, "This is where your journey ends." He let out a roar, ordering all his subordinates hiding nearby to reveal themselves. But nothing happened. No one came. The creature faltered. It couldn't understand why its command had gone unanswered. So small, huh? Jinwoo thought to himself. "You're a funny guy," he said to the creature. Then, in a cold voice, he spoke. "Come forth." From every thicket and patch of underbrush, shadows began to emerge. Some of them carried the severed heads of enemies like trophies. The creature looked around in confusion, asking what had happened, and then it realized. The shadow army had done its job perfectly. "You bastard!" the creature spat, but Jinwoo ignored the insult. He simply said, "Begin." The shadow army launched forward without hesitation. Igris, Beru, and Iron charged into the front lines, cutting down enemies by the dozens. 2 centaur-like beasts managed to slip through the chaos and charge straight at Jinwoo. But before they could reach him, Tank emerged from the shadows and crushed them both. "Enough!" the dungeon boss roared, and for a brief moment, the battlefield fell silent. Beru and Igris looked to Jinwoo, and without a word, they knew what to do. In a blur of motion, they rushed the creature, each severing one of its arms. At that moment, Tusk activated his gravity magic and slammed the creature to the ground. Paralyzed and unable to move, it could only watch as Jinwoo slowly approached. Now you'll answer my questions. If you cooperate, it'll be far less painful for you. But before the interrogation could begin, the creature suddenly convulsed and died. The system must have intervened again, Jinwoo thought. He pulled the Temple of Karlet key from his inventory, the cursed loot box reward, and stared at it in thought. He had never forgotten that place, no matter how much he tried. It was where everything had started, the double dungeon. The system was calling him back to the place where it all began. But he was no longer the weak, helpless man he had been. He had changed. With a determined expression, as if speaking directly to whoever was waiting for him, he said, "I'll be coming for you soon." While Jinwoo was away, Jinho was fighting a war of his own. It wasn't against monsters, magic, or the system, but something far worse: internet trolls. He defended his friend's name with relentless determination, threatening legal action against anyone who dared to drag Jinwoo through the mud. At last, he leaned back in his chair and let out a heavy sigh. He had just dealt with yet another wave of haters trying to tarnish Jinwoo's name. Out of nowhere, Jinwoo appeared behind him, thanked him for all his hard work, and asked if everything was all right. Jinho flinched. He hadn't expected him. Once again, he wondered how Jinwoo always managed to show up or vanish without the slightest warning. Jinho said everything was fine, then curiously asked why Jinwoo looked so disheveled. Jinwoo handed him a bag full of essence stones and explained that he'd just returned from a dungeon. Jinho's eyes lit up with excitement. The money from selling those stones would cover the cost of founding their guild and hiring an employee. An employee? Jinwoo asked, raising an eyebrow. Jinho reminded him of their earlier conversation about the requirements for officially forming a guild. To make it official, they needed 3 founding members: a guild master, a vice guild master, and one more. Jinwoo noted that even if the 3rd member was just for formality's sake, it still had to be someone reliable, diligent, and steady. Jinho agreed without hesitation. Then Jinho added that there was one more very important thing they absolutely had to discuss. Jinwoo looked confused. He thought they had already covered everything important. But Jinho leaned in and asked, "Have you picked a name for our guild yet?" Jinwoo smirked. He had expected something serious. But Jinho insisted it was a super-duper important decision. He immediately started mumbling names like Sungyu Guild, Yusung Guild, debating whose name should come first and mixing up all kinds of combinations. Then Jinwoo cut him off. "How about Solo Player Guild?" Jinho froze in disbelief. "What?" he gasped. Jinwoo continued calmly. "It made sense," he said. After all, he cleared most dungeons on his own. Jinho paused, wondering if this was some kind of joke. Jinwoo was always so good at everything, but maybe, in the end, he really was just human like everyone else. Just then, a knock interrupted them. "Who is it?" Jinho asked as he got up to check the door. When he opened it, they both froze. Standing there was Hae-In. Jinwoo was the first to recover. He asked her what brought her there. She answered, visibly unsure. I came to join your guild," she blurted out. Jinwoo and Hae-In sat across from each other. He asked her again why she had come, but she simply replied, a bit sharply, "You heard me," and took a sip of her tea. She wanted to join their guild. Jinwoo sat there, clearly confused. He had no idea what this was really about. He pressed her. Did Mr. Go convince her? Did Mr. Choi kick her out of the guild? Hae-In didn't understand why it was so hard for him to believe that this was her own decision. She said no and added that she had no idea why Mr. Go would push her into this, or why Mr. Choi would fire her. Then Jinwoo asked, completely serious, "So why do you want to join the Solo Player Guild?" Hae-In blinked in disbelief, like she hadn't quite processed what she just heard. "Your guild's name is Solo Player?" Then Jinwoo replied that yes, that was the name, and added whether she had a problem with the name he and the Vice Guild Master had agreed on. At that moment, Jinho jumped into the conversation. He raised his voice, questioning whether Jinwoo was really going with that name, and accusing him of not even caring about his opinion. Jinwoo, taken aback, replied that since Jinho hadn't said anything, he had assumed he was fine with it. Jinwoo paused for a moment to calm himself after Jinho's sudden outburst and gather his thoughts. The situation was starting to slip out of his hands and cloud his judgment. Then he turned his attention back to Hae-In. He noticed her quickened pulse, her uneven breathing, and how she avoided his gaze. She was trying hard to stay composed, but he wasn't fooled. Why does she want to join my guild? He wondered. When he spoke again, his voice was calm and steady. He told her that if his information was correct, it had only been 2 years since she awakened as a hunter, and he was fairly certain her contract with the Hunter Guild was still active. Hae-In simply replied that she had enough money to buy herself out and terminate the contract immediately. Jinwoo wondered why she would be willing to pay such a penalty just to join their guild, but kept the thought to himself. He told her that his guild couldn't afford to pay that much for a hunter of her caliber. But Hae-In immediately responded that it didn't matter. Then Jinwoo asked her plainly why she was so insistent on joining their guild. After all, there was nothing for her to gain. Hae-In said nothing. She didn't know how to answer. Thoughts swirled in her head. What if she told him the truth? What if he thought she was crazy? Memories began to surface. Of the day she first met him, of the scent she noticed when she got close to him. It wasn't the usual unpleasant smell. It was something different, pleasant, strange, and it stuck in her mind. She remembered the nights she spent trying to find out more about him, the articles she read online, so much hate, so many rumors, but she never believed them. She remembered watching him during the preparations for the Jeju Island raid, even though she had told herself not to. Then came the memory of the battle with the Ant King, the fear, the helplessness. If it hadn't been for him, she would have died. She didn't know how or why, only that she woke up in a helicopter with Mr. Go sitting beside her. He didn't even need to say anything. She could feel it. Jinwoo had come in the final moment. He saved them all. Mr. Go confirmed it. It hadn't been a dream. She sat there, nervously fidgeting with her fingers, wondering how she was supposed to tell him. I want to be by your side until the day I draw my last breath, she thought. No way! She immediately kicked that thought out of her head. Completely lost, she buried her face in her hands, unsure what to say. Jinwoo watched her closely. He noticed her strange behavior, how her face had turned red, and began to suspect that she was hiding something. He didn't know what exactly, but he was sure this wasn't some sudden decision. She had to have been planning this for a while. He asked if she intended to answer his question. At that moment, she hesitantly said that she just wanted a more comfortable life and asked if that was such a bad thing. Jinwoo, caught off guard, told her it wasn't. Jinho, with a hint of sympathy, whispered that the Hunter Guild must have really overworked her. Jinwoo drifted back into his thoughts. He thought about Hae-In, how young she still was. 22, maybe 23. The burden of being an S-rank hunter had to be immense, and that serious injury she sustained on Jeju Island, it must have weighed heavily on her too. He felt for her. But then he told her that anyone wanting to join their guild had to pass an entrance test. Hae-In looked surprised and pointed out that no such thing had been mentioned in their recruitment post. Jinwoo simply replied that it was a new regulation and that the vice master had probably made a mistake while drafting it. Then he turned to Jinho and asked him to go grab some food and drinks for their guest. Jinho nodded and left to carry out the request. For the first time since arriving, Hae-In looked Jinwoo directly in the eyes and asked what kind of test it was. Jinwoo was taken aback. He wasn't sure if she was just being stubborn or if she was actually serious. In a calm tone, he told her she'd have to defeat one of his shadows. Hae-In let out a breath. With renewed confidence, she asked if that was really all, and added that it felt like he was underestimating her. Then, in a serious tone, she said, "Which one will it be?" Jinwoo assured her he would choose the strongest one. "Fine by me," Hae-In replied. They both stood up, and Hae-In asked where and when the test would take place. Jinwoo asked if she had any objections to doing it right now and suggested the gym at the Hunter Association building. As he said it, he realized the association was actually quite far. But at the same time, it occurred to him that this would be a good opportunity to test whether Shadow Exchange worked with a passenger. Hae-In was about to head for the door, but Jinwoo stopped her. He told her they wouldn't be going that way. She looked at him, confused. He gently wrapped an arm around her shoulders and explained that there was an easier way and told her to stay as close to him as possible. Still unsure, she pressed up against him and blushed again. Shadow Exchange. Shadows rose and swirled around them, and the two slowly vanished into the gate that opened beneath their feet. At that moment, Jinho returned with snacks and drinks. He stopped in the doorway and froze. The only one left in the room was a shadow orc. The orc stared straight at him, then, without a word, reached out, took the plate from his hands, and ate it, plate included. Jinwoo and Hae-In materialized in the middle of the gym. How? Hae-In blurted out, completely thrown by what had just happened. Jinwoo didn't answer. In his mind, he was confirming how shadow exchange truly worked. He assumed it followed the same logic as gate teleportation. And the fact that he'd successfully moved with another person confirmed that theory. In this case, the destination had been set by a shadow soldier. If he wanted to, he could have traveled even to the other side of the world. Jinwoo turned to the still confused Hae-In and said the test could begin. She didn't ask any more questions. She accepted that there were just some things she wouldn't get answers to. Instead, she pointed out that she had forgotten to bring her weapon. Jinwoo asked if she meant that Pickaxe and Hae-In instantly turned red. She stammered that it wasn't her weapon, but Jinwoo just smiled and assured her he was joking. Still flustered, she gestured toward the armory and suggested borrowing a weapon from there. Using her access card, she opened the door and began scanning the rows of stored weapons. She knew none of them were top grade, but for training purposes, they were more than enough. She picked a sword similar to what she was used to and said she was ready. Jinwoo asked one more time if she'd really be alright after all. She hadn't even had a chance to test the sword. Hae-In replied confidently that it didn't matter. Monsters never cared whether their enemies were ready or not. Jinwoo admitted to himself that she had a point. But it was exactly that determination that made him realize if he summoned a regular shadow, she'd cut it down in seconds. Igris. The name echoed through the training hall, and from the shadows emerged a fearsome-looking knight. Jinwoo told her this was the finest swordsman in his entire shadow army. Hae-In asked how they'd determine the winner. Jinwoo told her the fight would go on until she defeated his shadow soldier or gave up. He knew Igris wasn't his strongest shadow. But putting her up against Beru, that might be too much, maybe even traumatic. He looked at Hae-In. A powerful magical aura surrounded her. She was completely focused. Then something occurred to him. She had said herself that the weapon didn't matter. With a small apologetic gesture, he paused the match and asked if she could turn around for a moment. Even Igris seemed unsure of the reason, but Hae-In nodded and turned her back without question. Jinwoo summoned the sword he had obtained from Baran in the Demon Tower and handed it to Igris. Then he called out that the test could now begin. She turned around and immediately shifted into a fighting stance. "Begin," Jinwoo called out. As soon as the test began, Igris swung his sword in a wide arc. A surge of raw magical energy burst from the blade, tearing into the concrete floor and racing straight toward Hae-In. She dodged it effortlessly, her eyes still locked on Igris. In his mind, Jinwoo confirmed what he'd already suspected. She was fast. Most people wouldn't have survived that strike. In a split second, she closed the distance and launched a counterattack. Her sword sliced through the air, aiming straight for Igris's head. But Igris reacted in time and blocked the strike. Chairman Go was sitting in his office when he suddenly sensed a surge of overwhelming magical energy coming from the gym. He glanced out the window toward the training hall, but he was certain it hadn't been reserved for today. Using the intercom, he contacted security and requested a live feed from the gym to be routed directly to his office. On the screen, he saw Jinwoo and Hae-In materializing. He had no idea what was going on, but then he remembered their conversation in the helicopter. That moment when he told her that it was Jinwoo who had saved her and the others at the last moment. He smiled. Now it all made sense. He contacted security again and asked them to shut off the surveillance cameras in the gym. A strong vibration shook the office, causing the framed picture behind him to tilt. Youth, he thought to himself and returned to his work. Igris had lost. The force of Hae-In's strike had sent him flying into the wall, and Baran's sword had slipped from his hand. Hae-In turned to Jinwoo and, with doubt in her voice, asked if this was really his strongest shadow. She reminded him that he had promised to summon the strongest one, and she expected him to keep that promise. Jinwoo replied that in that case, she might get hurt, but Hae-In didn't back down. She added that she had wanted a rematch anyway. You knew? Jinwoo asked, surprised. Hae-In nodded. She said she had seen him in person, and also in the camera footage. Jinwoo closed his eyes and one word cut through the silence. Beru. From the shadows, the Ant King emerged. Even though Jinwoo knew that extracted shadows were weaker than their original selves, Beru was different. He had been born to kill hunters, born as a weapon. If he fought her seriously, her chances would be. Beru interrupted his thoughts, asking what he should do with this person. Jinwoo ordered him to defeat her, but without causing her any harm. Beru let out a roar so loud that most of the lights in the hall shattered. Beru extended his claws and prepared to strike, but Jinwoo immediately stopped him. He ordered him to retract them and reminded him that if he hurt her, he'd make his life hell. With a guilty expression, Beru pulled back his claws and assured him he understood. Hae-In watched him, and when he turned his back, she thought this was her chance. Beru was distracted. But before she could finish the thought, he appeared behind her in a split second. She had seen this before, the same movement the Ant King had used on Jeju Island. She pushed down the wave of panic and swung her sword, yelling that she wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. The blade rushed toward Beru's neck, and just before it connected, he calmly caught it without taking a scratch. He was forbidden from harming her, so instead, he chose to show her just how massive the gap in strength between them truly was. He wanted to take away her will to fight. Hae-In kept up her rapid strikes, but it was useless. Beru dodged each one with ease. I'm not done yet, she thought, pushing her pace even further, only to realize with a sinking feeling that it made no difference. Beru evaded everything without even moving from where he stood. He moved closer. Their faces were just inches apart, and then he roared. The force of it sent her flying several feet back. Jinwoo watched in silence. He thought to himself that the outcome had been decided before this fight even began. He asked Hae-In if she was satisfied now, and if they could end the match. Hae-In shook her head. She wasn't ready to give up just yet. Jinwoo couldn't understand what she was thinking. She had to know how big the gap between them was. Beru was different from his other shadows. He might be intelligent, but at heart, he was still a weapon built for killing. Even now, Jinwoo could sense that Beru was barely keeping his bloodlust in check. He could only hope Hae-In had a good reason for taking this risk, and that it wasn't just a reckless choice. Beru was growing agitated. His prey clearly didn't realize she was standing before a predator. And that he couldn't tolerate. He lunged at Hae-In with his claws drawn. She dodged at the last second and focused her magical energy. Activating Sword Dance, she unleashed a burst of energy and launched into a flurry of rapid strikes. But with her very first strike, her sword shattered against Beru's hardened exoskeleton. Even so, the impact threw him slightly off balance. She had saved her strongest ability for this exact moment. She knew she didn't have enough mana for more than one shot, but one should be enough. She activated Sword of Light. Her broken sword transformed into pure energy, and in a single flash, Hae-In pierced through Beru's defense and struck him. Jinwoo watched in horror. He could feel it. A command had activated deep within Beru's mind. A command implanted by the queen at the moment of his birth. It was instinct. Annihilate the enemy. A murderous urge took hold of Beru, and this time, nothing could stop it. He extended his claws and drew back for a killing blow. Jinwoo shouted, but Beru didn't respond. The claws closed in on Hae-In, and she simply shut her eyes. A deafening explosion rang out as two immense forces collided. Hae-In opened her eyes and saw Jinwoo. He was standing between her and Beru, firmly gripping Beru's arm. I told you to stop, he said calmly. Beru snapped out of his trance, staring at Jinwoo with a guilty expression. Jinwoo turned to Hae-In, asked if she was all right, and offered her his hand. She nodded and got back on her feet. Jinwoo asked why she was pushing herself so hard. There was no need to go this far just to join his guild. Hae-In remained silent, head bowed. Jinwoo went on. He told her it had only been an entrance test for a nameless guild, and that a hunter of her caliber shouldn't be risking her life for something like that. He asked again why was she doing all this, but Hae-In still said nothing. Growing a bit frustrated, he leaned in closer and asked if she even planned to answer him. He wondered what it was she was truly after. And then he said it out loud. The final question was the reason behind her request. Him? At first, it seemed like Hae-In hadn't even registered what he said, But after a moment, she blinked and looked at him, confused. "What?" she blurted out. From her reaction, Jinwoo figured that couldn't be the reason either, but no other possibility came to mind. Then she answered, "Yes, I think so." And with flushed cheeks, she looked straight at him. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments, and if you'd like to support me, consider leaving a like and subscribing.